What if I told you that better sleep isn't just about habits, it's about rewiring the brain's nighttime signals? Here's how science says we can do it. Sleep isn't just about tiredness, it's about a coordinated handover between brain systems. That sounds crazy, but it's true. The hypothalamus, which regulates our circadian rhythm, basically needs to send a strong off-duty signal to the rest of the brain, which basically says, okay, I'm reducing arousal in the prefrontal cortex, for example. So when stress or overstimulation basically interrupts that handover, we stay in day mode for like way too long, and that's why we're just up staring at the sky or ceiling when we're meant to be sleeping. But one of the most effective ways to basically support this shift is by creating a clear pre-sleep routine that basically cues the brain's internal clock. So this isn't just psychological, like light exposure, movement patterns, and emotional tone directly influence that melatonin release. So dimmed lights, for example, slower movements, and calmer thoughts act as a biological emission slip for the brain to basically slow down. So imagine finishing a long work day and heading straight home from emails to bed. The mind feels like it's still basically in a meeting, replaying conversations, anticipating tomorrow. But with even 20-30 minutes of intentional wind down, reading something calming or like stretching or soft prayer, the brain just gets consistent signals that actually nighttime mode has begun. We can actually wind down now. And from a faith perspective, moments of gratitude or prayer before bed not only quiets like that mental noise that's going on, but it can also reduce activity in the amygdala, which is the brain's fear and alertness center. So this makes it easier for the hypothalamus to lower our arousal threshold. So you know what? We can just sleep faster. So one thing we can basically take away from is this: the brain thrives on predictability. So when it comes to sleep, like, we just need an epic nighttime routine, which is what I'm basically saying, no matter how busy the day has been. So here's something fascinating, which I can't believe I'm saying that in a video where I'm speaking about sleep, but here we are. Light is basically the master clock. Let me unpack. So the brain's strongest sleep signal comes from light. So specifically the way it hits special receptors in our eyes. But these cells send direct messages to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that's the brain's master clock. So when we get bright light in the morning and dim light in the evening, we're reinforcing the brain's natural rhythm. Evening light, especially blue rich light from our screens, basically delays our melatonin release, and that's why late night scrolling can push the brain's sleep window back by an hour or more. So morning light, on the other hand, basically anchors the circadian rhythm, which basically improves both like our sleep and like how deeply we sleep. So a practical example: stepping outside within an hour of waking up for like 10 minutes can basically signal like it's daytime to our brain. But you know what, we could actually just open a window, it's okay. And equally for our nighttime, we could switch to like warm dim lighting and just keeping our screen use to like a minimal amount. Basically just helps us understand that actually it's nighttime. Next, let's talk about the stress sleep loop. So what's surprising is how closely stress and sleep are wired together in the brain. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis basically oversees and governs the stress response, so releasing cortisol to keep us alert. So it's a healthy rhythm. Cortisol basically peaks in the morning and dips at night, but chronic stress, overthinking, or emotional strain can keep cortisol elevated in the evening, signaling to the brain actually that it's actually unsafe to fully relax, which is so sad. One study even found that even modest stress in the evening can reduce deep slow wave sleep by up to 30%. So that's basically significant because slow wave sleep is where the brain is able to really consolidate memory, repair tissues, and balance our hormones. It basically just fix us up. So trying to force sleep when like we're stressed out just often makes it worse, and this activates the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the brain's error detector, which heightens our awareness of the problem. So the more we basically monitor the clock, the more the stress sleep loop just tightens. Okay, cool, but what can we actually do? So evidence has basically shown that downregulating the nervous system before bed works best, like slow breathing, for example. Gentle stretching or listening to like really calming music can just help lower our heart rate in a way that basically cues the brain's parasympathetic rest system. And whilst we're talking about calming down, we can also link this to the power of surrender. So in psychology, for example, we understand that control is a double-edged sword for sleep. So on one hand, good sleep hygiene matters, right? But on the other, over controlling your bedtime can just backfire, like raising anxiety and activating the brain's arousal centers. So behavioral science basically suggests that letting go before sleep, like just letting go of your stress, shifts us into the parasympathetic state faster than constant monitoring. So this isn't passive, it's basically an intentional choice to release pressure. So for some of us, this means journal, just so you have all your worries down in one place. For others who are Christians like myself, prayer can be one of the most effective way to surrender. Studies have shown that contemplative practices like lower heart rate, reduce blood pressure, and quiet the amygdala. So creating the ideal internal conditions for your sleep. It's basically a way of saying, I have done everything I can do today. Jesus, take the wheel. And you know what? Honestly, the bed isn't for problem solving. It's not. One of the fastest ways to train the brain into poor sleep is to let your bed become a place for overthinking. Yeah, I've been there. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia pretty much shows that the brain forms strong context associations. So if we repeatedly lie in bed while worrying, planning, or replaying the day, the hippocampus starts to link bed with mental activity instead of rest. It's awful. And again, evidence from cognitive neuroscience shows that it's a classic case of neurons that fire together, wire together. So the more we pair the bed with this wakeful thinking about life, the more automatic it becomes. So the reversal is simple, right? But strict. If sleep isn't happening after about 20 minutes, we could potentially get out of bed, do something a bit calmer, maybe some light stretching or reading, then return to our bed only when we're actually really sleepy. It's a bit risky though. But over time, I feel like it would reteach us that bed equals rest. Okay, so let's talk about why short sleep catches up faster than we think. So studies have found that after just 2 weeks of sleeping 6 hours a night, the brain's performance drops to the equivalent of 2 full nights without sleep. And you know what the most surprising part is? Most participants in that study felt only slightly tired. So their perception of functioning stayed high, while their actual cognitive abilities like memory and reaction time just fell sharply. It's crazy. So neuroscience shows that the prefrontal cortex, which governs decision making and focus, is especially vulnerable to this silent decline. Meanwhile, the glymphatic system, which is the brain's waste clearing network, basically can't operate fully without deep, slow wave sleep. That means toxins like bad toxins for your brain decline and can accumulate faster. And you know what? In daily life, this basically shows up subtly. So it could be misplacing items, struggling to recall a name, or making small costly errors at work. Over time, even like mild chronic sleep restriction increases inflammation and insulin resistance, basically raising the risk for both your mental and physical health. So those nights where you're getting 4 to 6 hours of sleep and you think it's okay, no, the small deficits, they actually do matter, they pile up. And I know it's difficult to get sleep, but prioritizing it, even though it's hard, I feel like it's a must if you want to function properly. Okay, so let's link this to how the brain actually even sets our sleep clock in the first place. So our internal clock, the circadian rhythm, is anchored in a tiny cluster of neurons in the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Yeah, it's on the screen somewhere. This master clock basically responds most strongly to light cues. So in the morning, for example, exposure to bright natural light triggers signals that boost cortisol and suppresses melatonin. So this basically sets the body in alert mode. So about 14 to 16 hours later, this same system begins the biological equivalent to saying, okay, we're going towards sleep now. So if morning light is delayed or absent, the whole rhythm just shifts later. So it's making it harder to fall asleep on time. But evening light exposure, especially from screens, can trick the SCN into thinking it's still daytime, which basically pushes the sleep window further out. So this is why consistent light timing is as important as light quality. So interestingly enough, sleep runs in roughly 90-minute cycles, right? So you move through light sleep, deep slow wave sleep, and REM. So here's the surprising stat. Missing just one of those cycles, about an hour and a half, can reduce emotional resilience the next day by up to 30%. So this happens because REM sleep, which comes later in the cycle, is basically really critical for emotional regulation. So it's when the brain replays recent events, stripping away the intense emotional charge that was with it while keeping the memory intact. So without enough REM, the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm, days more reactive, making stress and irritability harder to even manage. Okay, so let's talk about creating a sensory sleep cue. Most of us don't realize that the brain anchors sleep readiness to sensory cues in the environment. So a concept linked to classical conditioning. So this is why consistent bedtime routines work so well. They basically train our nervous system to associate specific sights, sounds, and smells with rest. So in neuroscience terms, the hippocampus and amygdala basically form memory associations between these cues and the relaxation response. I think I've mentioned something similar to this earlier in the video. Over time, even the start of the routine, like the dimming of the light or soft music, triggers the parasympathetic nervous system. So over time, without any conscious effort, the body starts releasing melatonin, muscles loosen, and breathing deepens. The beauty is this works quietly but consistently. Let's keep rest as renewal, not as escape. So here's the twist. Many of us treat sleep as an escape from the day, but neuroscience and faith offer a deeper frame. So sleep isn't withdrawal, it's renewal, right? If we try to have that mindset. So evidence from cognitive neuroscience basically shows that during sleep, slow wave sleep, the brain not only clears waste, but also strengthens neural pathways for learning and problem solving. So this is restoration on a cellular level, right? It's a nightly rebuilding project we rarely notice, but one that shapes who we're becoming. So faith can add another layer here. Just as the body rests, the spirit can rest too. So some choose to pray or reflect before sleep, basically handing over the craziness of the day as a way to release mental tension. So the act of basically trusting that tomorrow will bring just new behavior. So you know what, we could try approaching bedtime or sleep not as the end of a day, but the start of recovery for the next one. See what I did there? So it will basically shift the mindset from I have to go to sleep to actually I get to be restored. And that's basically how we turn intention into reality. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm not sure what to link this video to, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. Okay guys, speak to you soon. Bye.